A Theory from the Inside, Part 4, or Mary's Room. Roses are gray, violets are gray. Maybe the best way to close out the second season. We're on episode 9 of 10, so one more to go, is to simply summarize the progress we've made in thinking through whether a new kind of music theory is or could be possible. One that necessarily prioritizes our direct knowledge of what music is, and that more definitely clarifies the problem with explaining from the outside. Provisionally, that summary is for next week. For now, though, let's talk about the knowledge argument, also called Mary's Room. The famous thought experiment by philosopher Frank Jackson. It clarifies, I think, the hard limitations of explaining or of characterizing an interior event, a perception, from a strictly exterior standpoint. Let me recount it briefly. Alterations to the story come from Professor Jeffrey Kaplan. My own read of his retelling is that minor alterations aim to eliminate some objections to the argument as originally stated. These objections might be valid, but also turn out to be trivial. They distract, perhaps. It's a clutter he hopes to clear away. In the original, Mary is in a monochromatic room. In the Kaplan version, she's simply colorblind. Mary is a scientist. As I say, she's colorblind. She sees only black and white, or shades of gray. She's also, by the way, quite brilliant. She studies across the sciences, physiology, chemistry, physics, neurobiology, etc. Now, somewhere along the way, Mary becomes interested in studying color. She decides specifically to learn about the color red, its wavelength in nanometers, various facts about light, but she also studies human perception, photoreceptors and the cones that are connected near the fovea. She reads about the optic nerve, leans into neurobiology, the brain. In time, Mary in fact learns exhaustively every objective knowable fact about the color red. She has all of it, complete. One day, here's more of the Kaplan modification. A serum is invented to completely cure her of her color blindness. Let's have Mary stand in front of the vivid rose bushes in her back garden just as she receives the cure. She's looking directly at a blossoming red rose, just now as the serum takes effect. Now, the question is, here's the point. Does Mary learn anything new about the color red? The obvious answer seems to be, of course. Namely, she learns what red looks like, what it is like to see red. It's a counterexample to physicalism, says Kaplan. If there is even one example of a non-physical fact, we might call it, if there is something more to know, additional to every physical fact, that one counterexample would defeat physicalism. But bringing Mary's story into our podcast, to themes relating to art, to music, and to theory, its implications seem to me almost endlessly rich. Firstly, as I said, it clarifies the hard limitations of explaining an interior effect, of characterizing a perception, at least exhaustively, from a strictly exterior standpoint, and how the attempt to do so actually puts us out of touch with it. Science explains it in its way via physical facts that include the body and the brain. But not only is seeing red something additional to every physical fact, it also seems to be something distinctively other than every conceptual description representing a physical fact. I know it's not Jackson's main point, but for me the story juxtaposes concepts about and perceptions of, and brings these modes of apprehending into sharp relief, different ways of knowing. Our directly perceived knowledge of something is so unlike the concepts we use to make sense of it that when we have all of the concepts, we still don't have it. Worse, we have perhaps lost it precisely in the process of pursuing the explanation for it, in looking everywhere but where it already is, in our experience. In the case of science, we may have good reasons to prefer the objective descriptions as a corrective to direct perception. But in art? If, as we've said before, music is what it most is when it's simply what it seems to be, then in this case, writing off what we know and experience with words like, what's really happening is, and then deferring to physical descriptions, just doesn't work. I agree with the desire to explain music. That seems right to me, not wrong. Yet to explain, to characterize qualitative experience from objective physical facts necessitates representative concepts that are hopelessly unlike, are everything but music. This particular desire for and difficulty of explaining seems specific to processes that involve the physical, but whose outcome, what we're hoping to explain, is an inner effect. For contrast, think of something like a differential gear. When what we want to explain is a strictly physical outcome, wheels driven but at independent rates, then it works to explain via a strictly physical process, the gears. But in the case of something like music, where the means of production are physical, but what we really want to explain are the effects, not as they really are, but as they seem to be. Objective characterizations then, at best, correlate to rather than comprehensively cause our so different inner experience, the music. When I wind the tuning peg, a small gear turns on a machine head, and the low E string tightens. A physical effect, physically explained. But when 3 times I pluck the string with unusually insistent force, the menacing sense of the low solitary tone, the foreboding of its last sounding and long decay, is not geared into anything merely physical that is unmysterious and comprehensibly causal, nothing that can easily characterize and explain. Yet I know what I'd hope to explain. If there is then in experience itself a kind of knowing, an apprehension not conceptual but direct, then a theory that explains, not hopelessly from the outside in, but directly from this inner knowing, might possibly emerge in music.